Welcome to That's Life. I'm your host, Leach. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Saturday show as we talk about a very hot topic of the evening. Please make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media channels. And please share because we do like to share our Saturday shows with other viewers. So, our sponsor of the week is About My Daddy's Business. It's a nonprofit organization that provides single father spiritual, emotional, practical, financial, administrative assistance to raise their children. All of their information is below on our ticker, so please utilize them if you're looking for a service for single fathers. Now, as you know, we always deal with COVID because that's ever fluid. So we deal with COVID numbers every week, and we always talk about the confirmed numbers as well as the deaths. Confirmed cases as of 7:35 p.m. this evening is 162 million globally. As of now, we have a little over 3 million deaths. I'm asking everyone to please make sure that you're following the guidelines of the CDC. I know recently they have lifted up mask mandates for some states, but we're just asking that you stay vigilant, take care of yourself. If the vaccine is offered in your area, consider taking the vaccine. I did, and I'm glad that I did and made that decision. So on today's show, we're going to talk about a very controversial, hot topic, guns in the church, with my very special guest, my friend, Pastor Ward. And I think that it's kind of necessary to talk about this topic, especially now, because there's so much legislation that's passing with guns in the church. And it's making a lot of controversy with people in the church, as well as members and just everyone in between. So it's necessary to kind of have this conversation. So when we get back from our commercial break, we're going to kick straight off into it and talk about guns in the church. Welcome back to That's Life. I'm your host, Leah Leach. Thank you so much for tuning in to our hot topic, guns in the church, with my very special guest, Pastor Ward. We're going to talk about the controversy behind guns in the church and just all the legislation that has happened within the last year. And a lot of people don't really know, but there's been a lot of legislation that has passed when it relates to guns in the church. So, as you know, I always bring the stats, so I'm going to bring stats to you now. From LifeWayResearch.com, since 1999, there have been 19 fatal church shootings. The deadliest was in 2017, and this is the picture that you see that happened in 2017 of the shooting at First Baptist Sutherland Springs in Texas, with 26 deaths, including an unborn child. Texas and Georgia have had 3 church shootings, and one of them happened on November the 5th, 2017. And as we know, the Charleston mass shooting happened on June the 17th, 2015 at Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. And we can see the images of those that were decedents based on that mass shooting. So we're going to talk about this because I feel that this is a topic that a lot of people want to avoid because it's the church. And obviously we're talking about guns and we're talking about things that are uncomfortable, but I think it's necessary to talk about it. And I'm super excited about having my friend, my brother, Pastor Ward. Pastor Ward, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm humbled that you even thought of me to participate. And I'm grateful for the friendship that we've developed over the years. It's amazing to be able to see you, how you've grown and developed this platform to be such a very important and vital tool out in the internet world. So proud of you and excited for everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And that means a lot from you. We've known each other for quite some time. And ironically, we knew each other and didn't really know that we had a link, which was through my cousin. And I'm very thankful for the friendship that the two of us have had. So, Pastor Ward, I just want to start with my first question. What do you believe your stance is with Christians owning guns? And a lot of people, it seems that seems to be a central topic when it becomes to the Republican Party, especially with people who believe that they should carry guns and own guns and also have their faith. What do you believe your stance is about that?
Well, I believe recognizing the fact that this stream or this program will be viewed all over the world. You have many different countries that have different types of strategies or cultures when it comes to carrying guns. We are an armed society. So, as a armed society, we would be individuals who would carry guns naturally. You know, from the founding of this country, there's always been some sort of a weapon that we've carried. It's in our Constitution that we have the right to bear arms. To say that us as Christians should not carry guns or should carry guns, it would be uh, kind of antagonistic to who we are as Americans. So I'm open to anyone owning a gun. Anyone can own a gun, even if you are a person of faith. Yes.
Definitely, definitely. And so, with that being the case, what is your stance about guns coming into the church? And I know that I've had this conversation with multiple people from the church, within the church, that are members, clergy, who believe that guns being in the church is almost, is to some level unethical and almost unpure, that we shouldn't do that. What is your stance when it comes to guns being in the church?
I believe that for appropriate personnel that are in church, that weapons, unfortunately, in the day and time that we live in, with our governmental politics being as polarized as they are, with the ideas that so many have in this diverse country, along with the fact that you have so many people out here who unfortunately just are not mentally well. You know, the reality of it is that it is important that with the appropriate personnel should be able to carry and should carry weapons in the church. I don't necessarily encourage or promote gun towing, but it is something that the way our society is right now, and we are welcoming so many people into our congregations, into these spaces of worship. I think it is important to have the appropriate trained personnel to have weapons, not only around the outer parts of the church or around in the hallways or in the different class areas and things of that nature, but also sometimes it's very necessary to have it in the sanctuary.
And it's ironic because I know that when I was a child growing up, it was almost unheard of that
Sure,
anyone would even consider bringing a gun into the church. But as you said,
sure.
times have changed, and politics and people and have changed over the course of time. And I think it's kind of necessary to have a dialogue about security and what that
Hmm.
looks like in the church. And I
Hmm.
think far too often, it's of course the people who mentally are going through things that are the ones bringing the guns to the church, and that has
Sure.
it impacts everyone else as a mass. And we're going to talk about that later on because
Okay.
like you said, with the person that has it in the right hands, I think that security is necessary when it comes
Hmm.
to the church.
Hmm.
What do you believe are some of the vulnerabilities that exist in the church? Because I think to some level there are vulnerabilities that exist now that were not as prevalent back then. So, what would
Sure.
you say are some of the vulnerabilities that exist in the church today?
Some of the vulnerabilities that you may find that may need protection. And I want to say that first of all, as I answer this question, I'm not the foremost expert in this area, but just because of my experience in the church and growing up in the church, I can definitely say that it's important that we secure the resources that the church brings in. You have to provide security for the vulnerabilities of our elderly members or our elderly congregants who worship. I remember very vividly a situation where there was a one of our elderly members of the congregation who was literally getting out of her car to go to noonday Bible study, and in the parking lot of the church, she was mugged. In the parking lot of the church, she was mugged. So our elderly is vulnerable. Funding, it can be a target. Uh, Even if there's something that is very debatable and pressed from the pulpit standpoint or from a teaching standpoint, our pastors can be vulnerable. The vulnerabilities and the need for the security, and in some cases, in the need for those weapons, it can become very mandatory and necessary.
Definitely. And that's one of the reasons why you'll find in the big churches that armed security is necessary to be
Absolutely.
in the church, because unfortunately, you can't change people on the outside. You can't change what people's minds are, mental states are. It's so important that the armed security is there to protect the people. And far too often, what happens is that things like this, like the woman that was mugged in a parking lot, happen, and you can't
Hmm.
control what happens outside of the church or even now inside of the church. So definitely making that good point. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue on this topic, guns in the church. It's a hot topic, but it's a necessary topic to have in order for people to understand all the politics and legislation that has changed over time. We'll be right back. Want to advertise your business or product on our show, That's Life? Go to our website at that'slife.leach.com. We have packaging for those that would like to utilize our ticker every Friday and Saturday for just $15 per show. You can also do video advertisements for $40 for our Saturday show. Take your business to the very next level and utilize us so that we can help you expand your business. Until then, make butterfly blue daily. Again, you can go to our website at that'slife.leach.com for all packaging, pricing, and further details. Hey there, welcome back to That's Life. I'm your host, Leah Leach. Thank you so much for tuning into our segment, Guns in the Church, with my very special friend and my guest, Pastor Ward. And we were talking about just how much things have changed over time and the importance of what security looks like in the church. And so I'm going to read another stat, and it's important that we kind of give you statistical information so you can kind of see different things related to the church. Since 2000, according to religionunplugged.com, more Christians across the United States from Texas to Maine are taking guns into the church. Lifeway Research conducted a telephone survey of 1,000 Protestant pastors in 2019 and found 45% said that their security measures involved armed church members. 62% say that they have some plan for an active shooter, and 80% said that they have a security measure in place during worship. And that's just, and to me, an astronomical percentage when you think about what people are doing in terms of armed security. I wanted to show this picture. So in this picture is Jeff Henry, and he explains some of the shooting techniques to members of a church that's located in Colorado called Mountain Springs Church in Colorado. And as you can see, he's doing gun training for those that are in the church, because now it has become almost central for people now in terms of protection for the church. So we're going to continue on this topic. So Pastor Ward, would you allow guns in your congregation at your church personally? Why or why not?
Would I allow guns in my church? Well, yes, I would have guns in the church. And when I say guns, I'm making the assumption that you are referring to your general congregation, your general a parishioner who comes in. For those individuals, you really discourage it. You post it. You post signs that this is a gun-free zone. But I would strongly discourage it. I wouldn't want that to be the case, but I can't necessarily stop it because I'm not sending individuals through metal detectors. We don't have necessarily wands where we're waving the wand to check and see if there's any weapons, like you would go through a security checkpoint at the airport. And it's my hope and prayer that in our country that will not be something that is necessary. But as far as allowing guns for our trained security, allowing guns for those who are assigned to have them for the purpose of protection, I would allow those in the sanctuary. Yeah, yeah. Because we got to have, because you never know you never know what someone's in the state is. You highlighted at the beginning of your show the situation that occurred in Charleston, South Carolina, a Mother Emmanuel, which is a small congregation, it's a historical church, but it was a small group of people. I think they said it was maybe 12 people that was total that was actually in attending that Bible study class. So it was a small group. And literally in a small church, a small setting, a lot of people like to think, or they tend to think that these types of situations happen in your bigger churches, or quote unquote mega churches, or large size congregations. But really, the reality of it is, it can happen anywhere. And when that young man went to that church, sat down, the story report says that he literally sat with the congregation and prayed with them, and enjoyed the Bible study. And then it was at the conclusion of the evening is when he pulled out a gun and shot. And now there was 9 people that were didn't survive that shooting. So if there had been a security person there, could that, I don't know, I can't say that there would have been a difference made, but the possibility of their lives being saved, it could have taken place.
Definitely, definitely. And I do see a question that's in our box, and we're actually going to answer that at our 4th segment. So I do see you, James, with your comment, and it's a very good question, and we're going to answer that towards the end of the show. So my next question to you, Pastor Ward, is, do you believe guns in the church make people feel safe? Because I'll speak for myself. With me being in the military background, and I've had that experience where I've, operated a gun before. I know sometimes when I see a gun, I immediately go into a state of panic, even though I know it's there to, in some level, it can be there to protect me. Do you feel like people in the congregation will automatically see that as a sign of safety, or do you believe that people wouldn't, and why or why not?
People's being safe when they see guns, that's with a diverse people with so many individuals that have so many different experiences with different backgrounds. It's going to vary from person to person. If I see, it was probably in the 90s when I saw a gun inside the sanctuary for the first time, and that individual was actually a member of the sheriff's department. At that time, it made me uncomfortable because it was something that I'd never seen before. Somebody packing with a gun in the sanctuary. But as time went on and I gained more information and had greater understanding, when I started working behind the scenes in ministry, when I started hearing about the different threats and the different challenges that comes about with working in the church, and understanding from a broader perspective that there's people that are not well. There are people that are not well. And so, yes, there can be an element of safety when it comes to seeing guns in the right hands, in people's hands who are trained, but when it comes to just your general parishioner, if you don't know them, you don't know what their motive is or what it's about, that can create a level of unease. So I think it becomes a responsibility of those who are in leadership to really communicate, really teach, and really talk about to that congregation who should have guns, who shouldn't have guns, why those who should have guns do have them, so that we can ensure that the worship experience that is everything that God would have us to have.
Absolutely. And it was a great point that was put into the box, is that as a kid, it can be distracting and a bit scary. But I think it's important to talk to your children specifically about topics like this. And it gets interesting when you deal with children, because children's minds they're just cut and dry. They're black and white. And sometimes with the situation like this, it leaves a little bit of gray area, but you just have to have open dialogue with your babies. My
Absolutely.
next question to you is, do you think that churches need to train members on handgun skills? And obviously, we saw a picture of Jeff Henry, and he was teaching his members how to, properly shoot a gun, probably how to load, how quickly you need to respond to response time. Do you believe that that's something that it will end up being in terms of guns in the church?
I think that what you will have is you will have individuals who have opportunities as an option, or what we would call in school are electives. It's not a requirement, right? But it's an elective opportunity for you to choose to sign up, to go to train, to learn how to handle a gun, how to use a gun properly, and things of that nature. I do not see in the future, uh, unless circumstances change and God releases that for every individual pastor. I do not foresee that being okay. If you're gonna be a member of this church, you're gonna have to learn how to shoot a gun. You're gonna have to learn how to load that bad boy, because no, I don't see that being a mandatory thing for membership. We're here to save souls, and we're here to help individuals to grow and develop their relationship with God, and that's our primary focus. Understanding that we do live in a fallen world, and so that opportunity. And what about some psych evaluations? What about some mental health evaluations? What about those types of things? And I would like to see, it's my opinion. You asked my opinion now, but I would love to see, along with some gun training, I want to see some health wellness checks, some mental health checks, right? Right, because if a person with a gun who is not mentally well, that could be a very, very dangerous, a very, very dangerous combination.
And I'm just going to speak for me. Everybody doesn't need a gun in the church, because there's some people like
Amen.
me. I love Jesus, right? Anybody knows me, that my foundation, everything that I'm built on is God centered. But I'm still
Right.
human, people. And if you
Mm-hmm.
catch me on the right day,
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
depending on
ma'am.
what's going on in my life, I can't
Yes, ma'am.
say that I'm not going to be a person that might not be temperamental. Now, am I going to go shoot someone? Absolutely not, because I don't want to go to
Right.
jail. And
Right.
obviously, for other intensive purposes, I don't want to experience that. But I think
Right.
everybody does not have to be required to have handgun skills. I
Absolutely.
think that there are some people that are instrumental in the
Mm-hmm.
church that should have the ability to be able to know how to operate a weapon in case something happens. So, my question to you, which is the next question, is to protect your congregation, would you shoot someone who poses a threat? And I'll speak for me. If I was a minister and I saw someone that was posing a threat to my congregation, and I was licensed, let me just say that first as a disclaimer,
Mm-hmm.
licensed
Mm-hmm.
to shoot. And if I had to, I think for the protection of my people, because I'm such an empath that way, I would protect those that are in my congregation. So, how do you feel about that, Pastor Ward?
As I think about it, um, the threat of life. If there's a threat of ending a life from someone, if I was put in a position where I would have to do it, and it would have to be up with complete certainty. You know, I don't have a problem with utilizing the gun. I recently told a friend of mine, I said, do not mistake my kind-hearted, gentle, loving spirit, for weakness. And you can fool me a couple of times on some things, but don't expect that you're going to get over on me all the time, because if you're not careful, you might be surprised at what might come out. Just laughing and joking with them or teasing them, yeah. But no, it would have to be a circumstance that was necessary. And also, I would say to you is that those individuals, I've repeated this over and over again about having personnel or individuals who are trained to assess those types of situations. I would rely on their training and rely on their judgment to make a decision to have to shoot someone for the protection of life, for the preservation of life. Yes.
Definitely. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying I would shoot to kill. I think for me, I would shoot to disarm because that's where my
Exactly.
mind automatically the
Mhm.
purpose is to get the person to stop. So I'm not
Right.
trying to shoot to, put all the bullets inside of your body. I'm just shooting you to stop you from hurting
Right.
others.
Exactly.
As the song goes, try Jesus, not me, because I'm still a
Right.
human, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I'm still
Right. Right.
human.
You
I'm
want to
going
throw
to make
hands,
sure
ain't
that
you?
human life, especially if it's my child or if it's my spouse or someone
Absolutely.
that's close to me, I would want to protect their life. But I think that far too often people shoot to kill, and that's what we've seen countless of times with police officers and black men.
Absolutely.
They're
Hmm.
it's a shooting spree, and for me, it's
Hmm.
bigger than that. If the person is a threat to you, you definitely want to shoot to disarm, not to shoot to harm. So
And the
obviously,
reason why that is for you, the reason why that is for you, is because you have a value for human life. There has been in the culture, it has seemed like there has been a reduction of a value for human life. The reduction of, especially when you look at social media, there's been so many times where people go after individuals' jobs, their ability to make a living. And you just never know what someone is going through to get them to that place. But like you said, not shoot to kill, but to shoot to stop, right? It's two different things. And that potential individual who is going to be shot to stop in a scenario, they can potentially get the help, be rehabilitated, be transformed in a very loving way that'll help them to overcome whatever that darkness is that they've been dealing with in their life. So I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, and so. And I will say this to you: you may be surprised at the number of individuals out here who are pastors, even as they're preaching on Sunday morning, uh, may have something under that pants leg, right? To in case something goes down. You just because you never know. You never know.
definitely, definitely. My last question for you for this segment is: do you believe in universal backgrounds? And let me tell you something. That has been a hot, super hot topic when it comes to
Hmm.
guns and gun reform.
Right.
Far too often we are debating about universal backgrounds. What is your take on universal background?
Absolutely. We've got to do something to to really assess who the individuals are that are carrying these weapons, who are purchasing these weapons. Um, the reality of it is you have to have a license to drive a car. You have to have a license to get your hair done, for ladies to get their perms or whatever, cosmetology license. You have to have a license for a barber. You got to have a license. For dentistry, you have to have a license. It's got to be some training, or some understanding. Medical doctors, they got to have a license, right? To get married, you got to have a license to get married. So if you got to have a license for all of these different things, and in order to obtain those licenses, you have to go through a series of steps or evaluations, right? To even obtain those licenses. Why not have a series of steps so that you can be qualified to obtain a gun license? We do need universal background checks to be in that particular process, and for the political landscape. I don't know if we're going to be talking about the politics of it all. I hope we do if we have time. But I think there's more to the story than just the universal background checks, and they're just using that as an excuse. You
Oh,
know.
listen, I've been telling people since day one, the people
Hmm.
that don't want backgrounds are the people that really need the backgrounds because those are the
Amen.
people that are mentally unstable and insane. And I
Hmm.
feel that unfortunately, far too often, we have so many people trying to skirt under the loophole of
Sure.
universal background. And what it
Hmm.
looks like is all these mass shootings that have happened. Far too
Absolutely.
often, guns are going in the hands of the wrong people. And
Yep.
it's just, you would think after such a time, we've had, I believe, over 60 mass shootings since January. And we're
Wow.
in May, people. Just the
Hmm.
United States has had over 60 mass shootings. It's
Absolutely.
insane that we're not doing something about universal background, and it's necessary to do something about universal background. We're going to take a quick break, and we have a new segment that we're going to do called our halftime. I'm super excited about this. So enjoy our halftime. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Sean, and I'm your Minute with the Mechanic. I'm here to show you guys about how to find the pressure for your car. The pressure in each tire can be different, and you don't know. So you might have a flat or running low. You want to go put air in it, but you don't know how much. So you just pick whatever air you want to put into it, but you could damage your tire either way you do it. So the best way to know exactly what air goes in your tire, the panel right here on your door. It tells you exactly how much air goes in each tire. The front tire is different from the back tires, so you definitely want to make sure you get it right. I don't want you guys paying money for tires that you don't have to. All right, that's it. Minute with Mechanic. I'm out.
Zeont Starfighters. It's a new action-adventure book series about broken teams being forced into an abnormal situation. There are unique powers and abilities to combat a deranged psychopath and his influence from causing senseless death. Available on Amazon is Story 1, The Beginning, and Story 2, The Struggle. Both are in ebook and paperback formats. It's the start of something that's going to be an epic tale and will become a household name. Please visit www.zeontstarfighters.com to get your copy today.
Hey, I'm Natasha Nedrick, the Empowerment Coach and founder of Empowering Imprints. And I have a question for you. When is the last time you went to work and you did something really life-giving? I mean, you showed up on a Monday morning and you were excited to be there. The truth of the matter is, far too often we find ourselves climbing corporate ladders we never intended to be on. Why? Because we've convinced ourselves that the only way we can make money to put food on the table to take care of our family is to work at a job that leaves us dead and feeling unsatisfied. Well, I want to challenge you to change your narrative, to believe that the gifts and the talent and the purpose and the passion that God placed inside of you shouldn't be going to waste. In fact, it should be making you money. As an empowerment coach, I work with faith-based entrepreneurs and professionals to help them discover their purpose, monetize their gifts, and build wealth. You keep saying you're ready to start your business, to write your book, to start your next. You know what God has placed inside of you. You keep putting it on hold. You know what it is. You just need someone to empower you to get it out of you. Go to empoweringimprints.com and let me empower you to do your next.
I didn't realize that going to take my first mammogram would impact the rest of my life. I had my life planned out, and I felt prepared in all aspects. I thought I had it all figured out until May 10th, 2017. Never in a million years did I know that breast cancer would be the newest and latest chapter of my life. My life, although chaotic, was stable. In a matter of months, my life was turned inside out. This is a story of my life. It breaks down how I discovered cancer, my journey through the pain and obstacles of it, and how I'm currently dealing with the aftermath. I must move forward on this unpaved road called life. I hope that after reading my story, you'll be more inspired, you will be stronger, you will feel freer, and you are able to move forward in your own journey, whatever that may be. God bless you, and know that I'm in your corner.
Welcome back to That's Life. I'm your host, Leah Leach. Thank you so much for tuning into our segment, Guns in the Church, with my very, very special guest, Pastor Ward. And I hope y'all liked our little halftime, because we're going to be doing that from now on out. We're going to give you little tidbits to take with you on our show. Hopefully you'll get some tidbits during the show, but we're going to put some little halftime minutes in there for you too. So, Pastor Ward, my next question to you is, what is your opinion about gun reform? And listen, that's another one that we've had a whole mess of a conversation about when it comes to gun reform and what it looks like in the United States.
Yeah. When I think about gun reform, number one, I'm thinking about really what types of weapons that are allowed on the streets of America. I think about how should there be a limit on the number of guns that individual owns? I think about what are the requirements necessary, what are the requirements that will be necessary even to commute with weapons or guns, you know? Can they go cross state? Can you cross state lines? Does your gun license work in other states? It's a complex issue, but there needs to be some reform. We need to re-examine what gun ownership really looks like. There are guns out there on the market that, you know, is really only designed to injure or maim or even kill human beings. That's what they're designed to do, you know? They're not designed for hunting, you know, a rifle, a shotgun, you can shoot yourself, a deer, right? But automatic machine guns, I couldn't imagine the justification or what sport it would be, a gun like that would be required with these high speed or large magazines. What is the need for that? What is the purpose of it? You know, and I could go on and on with the different things that are not necessarily restricted or regulated when it comes to gun ownership. So we do need gun reform, and I'm not, once again, like I said earlier, I'm not the foremost expert in the area, but it's definitely something that we have to take a look at for the safety of all.
Definitely. And I'm going to actually drop the question that was dropped earlier in our show from James. And I appreciate James for asking this question, because this is a very good question to ask specifically now. If a person brings a gun into the church, should they disclose that they have a gun?
Should they disclose it? What a hard question. Well, it's not a hard question, really. Yes, they should disclose it. Someone needs to be aware that you do have a gun when you go into this sanctuary, and then I'll tell you why. The reason why I feel that is very important is because when you have trained security, and let's come up with like a scenario, an example of why it would be important. You notify someone that you have a gun. If you are up and you're going, you leave. It ends up if you have it in a bag, right? Or if you have it on your person and someone else sees it and they become concerned and they try to alert the appropriate personnel, there needs to be some level of awareness of who it is that has that gun in their possession, because that could create a very major disturbance or even potential injuries that are not even that would never would happen. If had you not failed to disclose that information. So yes, we need to disclose it. And the truth of the matter is, right now, in a lot of places, that's not happening. It's not happening. People carry their guns because they're licensed to do so. They say it's their right, and even though we say it's a gun-free zone, they still do it anyway. I'll do what I want. Just like the whole battle over the past year about masks. I don't care. I'm not wearing no mask. You put others in harm's way instead of looking out for each other. So for the safety of all, for the betterment of all, for the well-being of all, I think it's very important that you really do disclose to someone, the appropriate individuals, that you do have, you're carrying a weapon. Yes, yes.
Definitely. And I would say so too. I think, just for courtesy that you should. I mean, I'm not saying that you got to walk around like Medea holding the, bag to your thing and you got the gun. I'm not saying all that.
Right.
But you still have to, I feel like there's a level of disclosure you have to have with people, especially the ones that are around you. You have to tell everybody in the church that you're packing, but you definitely should tell people that are around you. I do want to acknowledge a comment before I give you the next question. And I agree with you as well too, Chef BC. I agree that scenarios of why resident civilians should not have an automatic. However, I don't want the government to tell me what I can and can't purchase on how much or not to purchase when it comes to ammunition. I think that when it comes, and it's a two-part for me with that. I absolutely agree that people should not have automatic weapons. I think automatic weapons are excessive. I think that unless you are a butcher or some type of, why do you have an automatic rifle? Like even in the military, we are required to carry that, type of weaponry. So why is that okay for regular civilians to do that? I do believe to some degree that there has to be a little bit of a regulation when it comes to bullets. That's just how I feel. I know a lot of people would argue that point because there's a lot of people that don't really, they just are getting weapons to harm people, to hurt people. And I think that there has to be, that's where the background checks come into play, is to see who is mentally sound. What is the purpose of them having weapons? Because there are a lot of people that are having it for the purposes of mass destruction. And that's what we've seen far too often, too many times, unfortunately, in too many scenarios. My next question to you, Pastor Ward, is there's always been political issues with gun reform. And that's what we were basically talking about when it comes to gun reform. What would you say to politicians who argue against reform? Because it's, again, been a hot topic amongst even Democrats and Republicans, even when it comes to people in the church and people outside of the church. What would you say to politicians who argue that we shouldn't do gun reform?
When it's so, one of the things as I think about that question, I say, well, we should have some leaders who are pastors, maybe serve in the Senate. Maybe we should have some mothers who participate in our congresswomen. Maybe we should have some individuals of different faiths who have compassion and love for their fellow man to participate in the Senate. And maybe that would make a difference for our politicians as a whole when it comes to gun reform. As I think about it, everybody that I just described are current members of our Congress, our U.S. Congress. So one of the things I say, I guess I would say, what happens when it comes and hits your doorstep? What are you got to think about? Not what about protecting your family? The push. I cannot come up with a solid reason, a logical reason, other than having the backing for political campaigns, as to why there is so much angst against gun reform. So much of our current political climate is on disagreement and keeping us separated from each other. And so if one side is for it, the other side is automatically going to go against it. And I don't want to belabor the point, but just think about this. I want to throw something at you. Think about the fact that just last year in 2020, with almost unanimous support, we were able to get stimulus checks out to Americans. But when it came time in early February, for a stimulus check to be sent out to all Americans, half of those individuals who just last year voted with unanimous consent, half of them dropped off. And a lot of that had to do with the change of who was in office in the White House. You know, so it's just it's childish what we're seeing. I believe it's very childish, it's very immature, and it's all about power. And really, we have a problem in Washington D.C. with our political officials, where it's all about making sure that they have control. It's not necessarily that they're concerned about the well-being of all of the citizens.
Definitely. And unfortunately, I can say that in the state of Florida specifically, they just recently passed legislation for guns being in the church. And there, again, Florida has been one of those states where they have kind of have contradicted against things that go against the grain that is right. And, no shot to Florida because I love Florida. But I think that a lot of the politicians down there are not getting it right when it comes to some of the things that have to deal with reform. My next question to Pastor Ward is, what do you think Jesus would think about guns in the sanctuary?
I may be surprised with this, but I will begin by saying that I don't believe that he would have a problem with it. I don't believe our Lord would have a problem with it. Throughout the Bible, you see where weapons were commonly used. When David killed Goliath, he used a slingshot. Of course, we look at weapons. Sometimes we look at weapons in spiritual sense. No weapon formed against us will be able to prosper. So having weaponry, even in an assembly, a congregational setting, I don't think there will be a problem with it. But in the eyes of Solomon, I think that our Lord would want us to be wise and responsible with the use or with the carrying of those weapons in a place of worship. Yeah.
Definitely. And I made the joke the other day that I'm a descendant of Jesus because Jesus flipped the table in the temple. So just so you know,
right.
If it has to go down, yes. It will go down. But obviously using discernment and wisdom, as you said, wisdom is the key when it comes to situations like this. So we're going to talk about some tips and things on how to cope with aftermath of shooting. And far too often what typically happens is when a mass shooting happens, we get numb. Either we get numb or desensitized, or we become overly emotional and worried. And what it looks like for us is that so many times, so often we have seen this and it's just become almost unbearable to deal with. So we're going to talk about some strategies and things that we're going to do. And I did see that we have another question in the box. We will answer that question in just a second. James, thank you so much for your opinion and your thoughts, because we do value our viewers' opinions and thoughts. So we're going to ask the question first. Actually, we'll just go back and ask his question, and then we will also go into some tips and tools. So James's question is, if guns are allowed into the church, where does the liability in the event that there is a gun, that there is a gun-related incident? What protection is there for the church from a liability/civil lawsuit regard? And I think that's an awesome question to ask when it comes to liability, because it gets real interesting when you start talking about liability, right? Because the person that's coming on the outside is there for harm. But the church also is a sanctuary of protection, but there's only so much that they can do sometimes when it comes to armed security and all of that. So what is your opinion when it comes to that particular question?
With liability, we have to be prepared, number one. What does that preparation looks like when it comes to protecting the church from liability or protecting them from being liable? The preparation training, making sure that you have the individuals who are carrying those weapons and utilizing those weapons, that they have the appropriate insurance and background to use those weapons. You got to be very smart about who you are selecting as most of our volunteers or personnel or our individuals who are participating in these different roles in our local churches They're all volunteers. They're non-paid. They're not on the church's payroll. Uh, um, so when you have individuals that you are selecting for security and they become employed by the church, if your church is in that type of dynamic, there has to be some insurance coverages that the pastor and that church leadership has to look at to make sure that the ministry is protected. You know, there are ways to do it. There are mechanisms out there to do that, and I'm not sure exactly if James is looking to suggest that the potential liabilities or the consequences would come from the collection plate as a result of whatever took place. But having those types of insurance coverages helps to provide a protection in the event that something like a crazy event was to occur. So you have to really look at it. You have to study it. And you have to take it seriously to ensure that the church is protected all the way around from a business standpoint, from a financial standpoint, and from a parishioner standpoint. It can be very, very complex. And also, I want to highlight too to those who are viewing that churches are autonomous, meaning they have their independent governments within their own local churches. So one size does not fit all in what we're talking about tonight. We talked about Mother Emanuel and how that was a smaller congregation. They found themselves in a situation where
we're losing audio on you, Pastor Ward. I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you.
Can't hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now perfectly. You're good. You're good. Just lost you for a second.
Hold on.
Oh no, I'm with you. I can hear you perfectly now. Uh-oh. We lost you for a second again. No, I think it's the ear pods. And I do want to acknowledge what you said while we're waiting on Pastor Word to come back, Chef BC, is that absolutely there needs to be a hold harmless agreement that needs to occur. And I think it is necessary when it comes to membership and what that looks like. So thank you for making that point as well, too. We're getting Pastor Word. I think we're having some audio issues, but it's perfectly fine. We're going to actually talk about some tips and tools. We can hear you now, Pastor Word, I believe. Okay, so we're gonna. Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Thank you. And so we were just talking about what Chef BC was saying about that there needs to be a hold harmless agreement, and I believe that as well too when it comes to members bringing weapons into the church, because obviously, if the church had to be liable for something like that, it's a very thin line when we start dealing with things like that. So thank you for letting us know that. In addition, so now we're going to talk about some tips and tools on how to deal with the aftermath of shooting. And I think it is important that we do it. I do hear you now clearly, so I think you're good to go now. And so now we're going to talk about some tips and tools to help you to deal with aftermath when it comes to the shooting. So here's some tips and tools and things. And while we get Pastor Ward back, we're going to talk about some things relating to it. And this comes from counseling.org, and it's a necessary attribute that we talk about how to deal with the aftermath of shootings, because over time we've become desensitized to things like this during this time. So the first one is attend to self-care. It is important that you are monitoring your physical health. I think far too often when we have tragedy, we tend to not focus on our physical. We don't even realize that it impacts our physical and how that looks. So it's very important that we are attending to our self-care. Pastor Ward, are you back with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Thank you so much for coming back. And so we were talking about ways to cope with aftermath of the shooting. And the first one is attend to self-care. talk about how important it is for self-care, especially when we sometimes get desensitized to all the shootings that we've had.
It's amazing because we're exposed to so many things through our media. We are exposed not only through television media, but radio media. There's so much exposure to us where we're seeing things through our eyes. And what has transpired in the area of the shootings that we've seen over and over again. I highlighted that just in 2021, there's been over 60 shootings. This year, we 60 mass shootings this year, even more shootings, but 60 mass shootings. We become desensitized, and it becomes not a big deal. So in the area of self-care, we got to learn to put these phones down. You know, you and I are both here in Georgia, and we just this past week we had an experience where the gas pipeline that runs up the East Coast was shut down as a result of ransomware. And all of our government officials told us all that if we would just go ahead and just get gas like we normally do, that we would be fine. But what happened was because of our exposure to social media, people going out and getting plastic bags and filling the plastic bags up with gas and putting it in the back of their cars, and all of the long lines that we saw at every gas station that you can find. Now there are several gas stations, at least I think the last report that I saw, 60% to 70% of gas stations in the metropolitan Atlanta area, they don't have any gas there. And so it's going to take time for them to replenish that. A big piece of self-care that I want to encourage us to do, put the phones down, guys. Let's avoid reading the comments that are up under these news stories that get posted by CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Let's stop reading those comments, and being exposed to so many of these, what I like to call keyboard warriors. They like to write things with their names on it, but I don't know too many of them who get in somebody's face and say some of the stuff that they're saying. Because what happens is as you're taking that stuff in, it throws your mental, it gets you angry, right? It gets you frustrated, gets you depressed, and things of that nature. So a lot of the challenge that we need for self-care is really putting down some of the stuff and stop absorbing so many things that we're absorbing. Not social media. And so I just say that as a piece of self-care.
Definitely. And that actually goes in line with some other things that are on here, including pay attention to your emotional health. Know that others are also experiencing emotional reactions and may need your time and patience to put their feelings and thoughts in order. And I think that that's important because far too often we're absorbing information and we don't realize how much it impacts us on the emotional side. Number 3, try to recognize when you or those around you may need additional support. I cannot tell you how many times we do not pay attention to others that are around us that have the same anxieties that we have. Far too often, we don't know that our kids have the same anxieties about mass shootings, and the older community is not being paid attention to. So please make sure that you are paying attention to others around you. Number 4, avoid exposure to media. That is literally what Pastor Ward was just talking about. The overload of information you are getting from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever you're watching.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we're getting such an overload of information sometimes that just because you are aware and ahead of it does not mean that it's good for your mind. Your mind still needs to be able to relax. The next one, number 5, maintain contact with family and friends. They can provide you emotional support that is necessary in order for you to stay strong and for you to not get frustrated. Number 6, and I'm going to let you have this one too. Focus on your strength base. It's important to maintain practices that you have found to provide emotional relief. Remind yourself or people around you that certain events are meaningful and comforting to you. Pastor Ward, talk about that very briefly, because I think that sometimes what we do is we focus on the problem, but we don't focus on the people that are surrounded by us that can keep us centered. How important is it to
Absolutely.
focus on the strength base?
I want to talk about that a little bit by highlighting the point that I've discovered here recently, Leah. One of the things that I've discovered is individuals love accountability when they're holding somebody else accountable, right? But when it's time for them to be held accountable, oh, it's a whole different ballgame. So the question becomes, how can we foster relationships where there's mutual respect one with another, so that if I get off kilter, if I get off a little bit, how can somebody I need somebody sometimes who can check me, right? I need somebody who can let me know when I'm going a little bit out of the way. I need someone who can help to partner with me when I'm dealing with a struggle and I'm dealing with a heartache. And it's got to be somebody that you can trust. It's got to be someone you can love, who you love and that you care for, because and I know you said family, but what I've discovered sometimes is that you can have some family members who are not who are not your ideal candidate to be involved in the innermost parts of your life. You know what I'm saying? What you got to do is make sure that you have someone you can be vulnerable with in an intimate setting, who you can trust in a safe space to share what it is that you're dealing with and what you're going through, and who's going to be willing to provide you with some answers and responses that you need to help to keep you back on track. You know, um, and and then then of course there are family and friends that you can surround yourself with, who can love on you and support you in those difficult times. But I think we got to be very, very careful with that when we're talking about self-care, because sometimes injuries, uh, um, the struggles that we go through a lot of sometimes are caused by those family members. You know what I mean? And
Sometimes
I
they
could,
add to the stress.
mhm, yeah, they add to the stress, they add to the frustration, the aggravation, all of those things. Sometimes it's family induced. You know what I mean? Uh, um, you know, Leah, I know you have two small kids. Well, you don't have two small kids anymore. I've known you for so long, and I remember when they were babies and stuff like that. Now they're teenagers and everything, and I know how. I have a 21-year-old daughter, so I remember her teenage years. And it's like, man, you know, and I won't elaborate any further than that. I hope I understand what I'm coming from.
Man.
Uh, but there's so many different stresses, so many different issues, challenges on the job, things of that nature. Listen, for self-care, since we're talking about self-care, and how it relates to the potential where you're harming yourself and can have your gun in your hand, right? Let me encourage you, with the stresses on the job. Listen, your job, if you have a benefits package, they give you personal days off. They give you vacation. They give you sick days. Use them. Use them. Take a mental health day, right? Go to the spa. And if you can't afford a spa, go and run some bubbles in the bathtub and close the door and have your Kool-Aid. I'm going to call it Kool-Aid, and light a couple of candles and just try to relax and unwind and take those stresses or those issues and let them get away from you for a minute. And be careful about self-medicating. Be careful about self-medicating. Sometimes we self-medicate with things that are as a result of situations that are going on in life, and what we're self-medicating with can compound issue versus provide you with relief from the issue.
Definitely. And that actually goes in line too with something that I want to talk about on the next one. And I know, I think far too often it's easy to talk to people, but I'm going to switch up the last point because the last point is something that I think we need to add to it, but I'm going to tweak it just a hair. It says talk to others as needed. I would say if you feel emotionally unsettled by things that are happening with mass shootings, talk to a professional. There are professionals that are out there to help you through the process, whether that is your pastor, whether that's a psychotherapist, whether that's a therapist, a counselor. There are people professionally that are there to help to keep your stress level, your emotional stress level, to kind of maintain that and to keep it in order. Far too often, like you said, we go to the people who sometimes may not be the right candidate for helping us to cope with our emotions, especially when it comes to all the trauma with mass shootings and everything that's happened with us. My intention for this show was to talk about something controversial, but it was also to talk about the importance of self and making sure that we're not taking in all this information and becoming desensitized to everything. And like I said, far too often we do, and it's just unfortunate, but hopefully over time, over us talking about this, that we'll be able to encourage someone, and we'll also be able to help someone along the way that feels that maybe they are desensitized and that they need to go and seek help. Pastor Ward, thank you so much for being a part of this show. If members would like to get to know you a little bit better or see what you're doing in your congregation, where can they find you?
Oh, absolutely. You can find me on my first page is Devon Ward, of course. Please feel free to send me a friend request. The name of our church is Victorious Life Bible Church. We're located in Lovejoy, Georgia. There, in my about information, you'll see where the church is highlighted. Just click on the like there. You can connect with our church there. Also, on Instagram and on Twitter, we're at VLB Church. At VLB Church. You can connect with us there and on, as well as on Instagram and Twitter. I am at Ward for Christ. So I'd love to connect with you and we can talk further. And just feel free, And I just want to again just thank you so much, Leah, for allowing me to participate. We had a little technical difficulty there in the last few minutes, so I'm not 100% certain or confident that the questions lined up exactly with what we were talking about during that time. But I wanted to make sure that we got all of that straightened out. Technology can be crazy, but thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm so
and
grateful.
we know that's hence why we call the show That's Life, people. You know that we do our shows, we stream from home. So technological issues happen, whether it's our show, whether it's CNN, whether it's MSNBC. You're going to find technological issues everywhere, but we did get your perspective, and we're thankful for you being a part of this show, Pastor Ward. All right, so I always end with a quote in a Bible verse because that's what I do, people. So our quote comes from Alice Walker. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking that they don't have any at all. We have the power to change the narrative when it comes to gun reform, universal backgrounds. You have a voice, use your voice. Our Bible verse comes from Psalms 91:2 from the ESV. I will say to the Lord, you are my place of safety and protection. You are my God, and I trust in you. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. Until next time, my friends, see you then. Bye.